I had never thought I would destroy an $85,000 car, but when HOA President Karen Whitfield deliberately parked her Porsche Cayenne in front of my driveway every morning, she was trying to force me to give up the 8/10 of an acre I had just bought after 15 years of saving. A mysterious yellow-painted line appeared on my private asphalt, while the car with license plate KRN4EVR occupied my parking spot for the third time that week. "This is a shared parking area, within HOA easement rights," she declared, holding her clipboard like a weapon. Her confident face would soon change when I discovered the real conspiracy behind these harassment actions. Watching this during lunch break. Let me know where you're watching from. The sun filtered through the oak trees lining Pine Crescent that Saturday morning in early September, casting golden light across the property I had closed on 3 weeks earlier. After 2 decades as a geological engineer analyzing surveys and property boundaries in the oil fields of North Dakota, I had finally saved enough to buy this 8/10 of an acre at the dead end of a quiet street. The title search had been thorough. No HOA covenants, no easements beyond standard utilities, no restrictions except basic zoning. I had verified every word of that before signing because I wanted one thing above all else: freedom to build my 1,200-square-foot house exactly the way I envisioned it, without anyone telling me what color to paint the shutters or how tall my grass could grow. My property bordered the Meadow Ridge HOA community, a collection of identical houses where residents seemed more concerned with paint swatches than actual living. But my land was completely separate from their association. Standing at the window of my temporary rental cottage, I watched the black Porsche roll to a stop directly across my driveway entrance, blocking access to the property for the third time that week. Monday, it had been there for 4 hours, Wednesday for 6, now Saturday morning, and Karen Whitfield was clearly establishing a pattern. The door opened and she stepped out, blonde hair styled despite the humidity, white blazer crisp, clipboard in hand like she was conducting an official inspection. I had met her once before, 3 weeks ago, when she appeared at my property line with a cold smile and a comment about neighborhood standards. That encounter had lasted maybe 2 minutes. This one would not go much better. I grabbed my coffee and walked outside, keeping my tone level. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitfield. Your car is blocking my driveway again." She did not look up from her notes. "Good morning, Mr. Donovan. I see you still have construction materials in the shared parking zone. Section 12 violation." The words came out automatically, like she had rehearsed them. I felt my patience thin. "There is no shared parking zone. This is private property. I have the deed." Now she looked up with that same cold smile. "This section falls within the recorded easement for community access. County records. 1987 plat." She said it with such confidence that someone unfamiliar with property law might have believed her, but I had spent years reading survey documents and legal descriptions. If there had been an easement, the title company would have flagged it during closing. She clicked her pen twice and made another note. "You'll receive official documentation within 48 hours. Parking violations carry a fine of $680 per incident. The association takes these matters seriously." The number was oddly specific, and something about the way she said it felt rehearsed, like she had pulled it from some obscure regulation to make it sound legitimate. I knew it was nonsense, but arguing on my driveway was not going to resolve anything. She turned and walked back to her Porsche, heels clicking against the asphalt I had paid $4,000 to install. The engine purred, and she backed out slowly, deliberately, making sure I understood she was in no hurry to leave my property. As the car disappeared down Pine Crescent, I noticed something through the rear window, a manila folder on the passenger seat, and what looked like a laser measuring device behind the sun visor, professional surveying equipment. That was unusual for an HOA president to carry around. I walked to where her car had been parked and crouched down to examine the pavement. The yellow line was fresh, maybe 7 to 10 days old, based on how the paint had cured. It ran in one continuous stripe from the public street up to my front gate. 2 weeks ago, this line had not existed. Someone had painted it recently to create the appearance of designated parking. I pulled out my phone and photographed it from multiple angles. Old engineering habits kicking in, document everything, establish the timeline, build the factual record. As I stood, something near the corner trash bin caught my eye. Partially hidden under fast food wrappers were latex gloves with yellow paint on the fingertips, still fresh enough that it had not fully dried when someone discarded them. I photographed those too, careful not to touch them, noting the location and proximity to my property line. Back inside the cottage, I opened the county recorder's website and pulled up my property file. The deed was clear. No parking easements, no HOA attachments, nothing that would give Karen Whitfield or anyone else authority over my driveway. But while scrolling through the historical documents, I found something else. 6 months ago, someone had filed a zoning variance request for the vacant lot next to my property, a 1.2-acre parcel listed at $450,000. The applicant was Summit Realty LLC. I had never heard of them. A search turned up nothing except a bare registration in the Secretary of State database. The formation date was 8 months ago. Single address, 742 Maple Drive. I entered that address into the map and zoomed in. It was a house in the Meadow Ridge HOA community, and in the driveway sat a black Porsche Cayenne. The pieces locked into place the way geological data used to click together in the field when I finally understood the structure beneath the surface. Karen was not harassing me over HOA rules. She wanted my land. Or more precisely, she wanted me gone so she could acquire it, probably after wearing me down enough that I would sell cheap just to escape the pressure. The yellow line was not bureaucratic confusion. It was a strategy. The opening move was designed to make me question whether this property was worth the fight. But she had miscalculated. She thought she was dealing with someone who would fold at the first threat of legal paperwork. She did not know I had spent 15 years in an industry where decisions were backed by data and careful analysis. I knew how to build a case. I knew how to document evidence. And I knew the first rule of any conflict: understand what your opponent really wants. Karen wanted my land, which meant she had a plan, which meant there was money involved. Significant money if she was willing to go through this effort. The adjacent lot was key. If she controlled both parcels, she would have nearly 2 acres in a prime location. That kind of consolidated property could be worth far more than the sum of individual lots. Development potential, rezoning opportunities, maybe even a small subdivision if she could navigate the approvals. The yellow line was just the beginning. I could feel the pressure building, the escalation already in motion. She would send that official notice. There would be more confrontations, more blocked driveways, and more attempts to establish her false claim of easement rights. But now I knew what this was really about, and that changed everything. I finished my coffee and started a new document on my laptop, titling it simply Timeline. If Karen Whitfield wanted a fight over property rights, she was about to discover that I had spent my entire career proving what was actually beneath the surface. And the truth always came out eventually. 2 days after Karen's third parking incident, the certified letter arrived exactly as promised. The envelope was thick and official, with the Meadow Ridge HOA logo embossed in gold and a return address from Patterson and Associates, a law firm I had never heard of. I signed for it at 10:30 a.m. on Monday, already knowing what it would contain but needing to see the specific language. Inside were 3 pages of dense legal text citing HOA regulations that had no authority over my property. The key paragraph claimed I was violating parking ordinances within a designated easement area and demanded I cease storing construction materials within 30 days or face penalties of $680 per occurrence. The letter referenced county records from 1987 as proof, but provided no actual documentation, no survey numbers, no legal description I could verify. Several of the claims were clearly unlawful, designed to intimidate rather than inform, and I knew immediately this was meant to pressure me into compliance without questioning the underlying facts. I called the county recorder's office that afternoon and paid $25 for the complete historical file on my parcel, available in 3 to 5 business days. Then I contacted Martin Cross, a real estate attorney whose rate was $350 per hour. I booked 2 hours for Thursday and sent him the HOA letter along with my property documents. While waiting, I started a timeline spreadsheet documenting every interaction with Karen, every photograph, every piece of evidence. On Wednesday afternoon, something unexpected happened. I received an email from Harold Bennett, a Meadow Ridge resident I had never met. The subject line read, "Thought you should see this." His message was brief and apologetic. He explained he was a retired software developer who had lived in the HOA for 12 years. Never comfortable with Karen's management style, he had typed my name into the recipient field by accident when his email client's autofill picked me instead of another board member, and now that the mistake was made, he figured I deserved to know what was being discussed behind closed doors. The attached email was from Karen to the HOA board, dated 6 weeks earlier. Subject line, Opportunity, Pine Crescent Expansion. She wrote that if the association could acquire the vacant lot adjacent to my property, they would control the entire end of Pine Crescent, creating opportunities for premium development at significantly higher values. Summit Realty LLC was prepared to finance 70% of the purchase if the HOA could guarantee I would sell within 6 months. She included projected profit margins and suggested using association funds for the initial investment. The tone was casual, confident, and written like a business proposal rather than community management. I read it 3 times, understanding now with absolute clarity why she had been parking in my driveway and painting yellow lines on my asphalt. This was never about parking violations. She needed my land to make her investment worthwhile, and the harassment was designed to drive me out at a reduced price. I replied to Harold, asking if he would provide a formal statement if this escalated legally. He responded within an hour. Absolutely. Karen has overstepped for years. Most people are too afraid to challenge her because she controls the architectural review board, but what she's doing to you crosses every line. I'll help however I can. That was the first genuinely good news since this situation began. I had an inside witness who could verify the email's authenticity and testify to Karen's pattern of behavior. More importantly, I had documented proof of motive. She was not acting as an HOA president enforcing community standards. She was acting as a private investor trying to manipulate me off my land for personal profit, using her position as a weapon to serve her own financial interests. Thursday afternoon, I met Martin Cross in his downtown office. He was early 50s with sharp eyes and a manner that suggested he had handled cases like this before. I walked him through the timeline, the parking obstructions, the yellow line evidence, the Summit Realty connection to Karen's home address, and finally Harold's leaked email. Martin read everything carefully, made notes, and then looked up. Mr. Donovan, this is fraud and tortious interference. Mrs. Whitfield is weaponizing her HOA position to advance a private business scheme. When the county file arrives confirming no easement exists, we can file civil complaints and potentially refer this to the district attorney if she has falsified documents. But here's my advice. Let her keep going. Every letter she sends, every threat she makes, every time she blocks your driveway, it's evidence of a deliberate pattern. We document everything, and when we're ready, we make it public. HOA disputes resolve fastest when the community sees what's actually happening. I left his office feeling something I had not felt since this mess started, a sense of control returning. Karen thought she was applying overwhelming pressure that would force me to capitulate and sell. But every aggressive move she made was documenting her intent, building a case that would eventually prove she had abused her authority for personal gain. The 30-day deadline in her letter meant nothing. I was not selling. I was not leaving. And when those county records arrived showing exactly what I already knew, that no easement had ever existed on my property, Karen Whitfield was going to learn that fabricating legal claims to drive someone off their land carries consequences. Real, permanent consequences that would follow her far beyond this dispute. The construction was scheduled to begin Monday morning at 7 a.m., 3 weeks after I received the county building permit. Miller Construction had won the bid for foundation work, and their foreman, Ray Coleman, confirmed the timeline by email. Concrete trucks were due at 8:30, the excavator at 9, and the crew needed clear access to start grading and footer forms. I had coordinated permits, paid the $12,000 deposit, and arranged temporary utilities. This was the day my house would finally take physical shape after months of planning. At 6:45 a.m., I arrived to meet Ray and his crew. The sun was just coming up, the air cool and clear, perfect for concrete work. The black Porsche Cayenne sat across my driveway entrance with orange traffic cones positioned like an official work zone. Karen had escalated from weekend harassment to actively blocking construction. I called Ray. His voice was tight with frustration. Keith, I'm here with 3 trucks and 6 guys. We can't access your property. There's a Porsche and cones blocking everything. What's happening? I told him to hold and walked over to the car. Karen rolled down her window slowly, sunglasses on despite the early hour, sipping coffee from an expensive mug. Good morning, Mr. Donovan. Lovely day for construction. Unfortunately, you'll need to postpone until you've resolved the parking citations. HOA regulations require advance approval for commercial vehicles in shared easement areas. Her tone carried the same manufactured authority as before, but this time her hand was trembling slightly on the steering wheel. She knew exactly what she was doing. I kept my voice level. Mrs. Whitfield, HOA regulations don't apply to commercial access on private property. You're blocking my driveway. Move your vehicle so my contractors can work. She adjusted her sunglasses. This matter is under review by the legal committee. I'm authorized to maintain the restriction. You can file an appeal at the next board meeting in 3 weeks. I walked back to Ray, who was standing beside idling concrete trucks with his crew waiting. The meter was running on everything. He looked at me and laid it out plainly. Keith, every hour we sit here is costing you. Truck standby fees are $600 per hour for all 3. Crew labor is $900. Excavator rental is prepaid but lost if we don't use it today. And our contract has delay penalties. If we can't start now, you're looking at penalties of $4,300 because we have to reschedule around other committed jobs. I calculated quickly. The numbers were brutal. Karen kept the Porsche there for 2 full hours before I told Ray to pack up and reschedule. Concrete trucks dumped their loads at the batch plant. The excavator went back unused. When everything cleared out, I had lost $15,000, $7,200 in direct delay costs, $3,500 in material storage fees, and $4,300 in contract penalties. $15,000 gone because Karen parked on my property for 2 hours on a Monday morning. I documented it all. Photographs with timestamps, recorded conversations with Ray, copies of invoices, and penalty clauses. Martin Cross had told me to let her escalate and collect evidence. This was evidence. $15,000 worth of deliberate interference with legal construction on private property. But the financial damage was not the worst part. That afternoon, Karen posted on the neighborhood community forum. The title read, "Safety Concerns Unpermitted Construction on Pine Crescent." She claimed I was starting work without proper approvals, using unlicensed contractors, creating hazards for children and pets. She included a photo of Ray's trucks, carefully cropped to look chaotic. Within 3 hours, 47 shares and 83 comments appeared, mostly from Meadow Ridge residents calling me irresponsible and dangerous. Someone suggested reporting me to code enforcement for illegal activity. Reading those comments felt like swallowing glass. Karen was not just applying financial pressure anymore. She was destroying my reputation, turning the community against me with deliberate lies before I had met most of my neighbors. People believed her because she held authority and spoke with bureaucratic confidence. Most people do not question that combination. I knew Martin's strategy was sound. Document everything, wait for the right moment, and go public when the evidence is overwhelming. The county records would arrive soon, proving no easement existed. Every lie Karen told was building my case. But watching her poison an entire community against me with fabricated claims tested every ounce of patience I had left. Still, I held course. The truth always surfaces eventually, and when it did, Karen Whitfield would learn that destroying someone's financial security and reputation for personal profit carries consequences that last far longer than any HOA dispute. The package from the county recorder's office arrived Thursday afternoon, exactly 5 business days after I requested it. Inside was the complete historical file for my property, the original subdivision plat from 1987, all recorded deeds, survey maps, and any easements or restrictions ever filed. I spread everything across my kitchen table and started with the plat map, the foundational document showing how the land had been divided. The original survey was clean and professional, drawn by a licensed county surveyor with clear boundary lines and legal descriptions. There was a notation for public utility easements along the street, standard for residential property, but absolutely nothing indicating shared parking rights or HOA access across my driveway. The deed chain passed cleanly from the original developer through 2 previous owners to me, with no covenants beyond basic zoning. Then I found something in the Fujian section, A document dated April 2019 titled Amended Easement Map for Meadow Ridge Community Access showed my property with a yellow highlighted zone extending into my driveway. Labeled Shared Parking Easement per HOA Resolution 2019-04. Karen Whitfield's signature appeared as HOA president alongside what looked like an official county recorder's stamp. On first glance, it seemed legitimate, but something felt wrong. I pulled up the original plat on my laptop and compared it side by side, zooming in on details. The amended map was digital, not hand-drafted like the authentic 1987 document. More damning. The county recorder's signature block was pixel identical to a signature on a completely different document from 2017, clearly copied and pasted. This was not an official county record. This was forgery. Karen had fabricated an easement map, added fake county authentication, and filed it into public records, where most people would never think to verify its authenticity against source documents. Under Title 18, Section 1001, falsifying government documents carries up to 5 years in prison. Karen had committed a federal felony. I called Martin Cross immediately. He answered, and I heard papers rustling. "Keith, good timing. What's the status on those county records?" I explained what I had found. Walking him through the digital manipulation and the copied signature, long pause. Then his tone shifted from advisory to tactical. "This is criminal fraud. If she created a fake county document and filed it as authentic, she violated federal law. We need expert confirmation. I'm recommending a forensic document examiner named Dr. Patricia Vance. She'll cost $2,800, but her testimony is ironclad in court. Once we have certified proof of forgery, this case transforms completely." I hired Dr. Vance that afternoon. She had 30 years of experience and called back within 48 hours. "Mr. Donovan, the amended map is definitely fraudulent. Digital artifacts are clear. The signature is duplicate pasted, and the stamp ink formulation was not in use during 2019. I can provide a full written report that will stand up in any legal proceeding. Whoever created this knew exactly what they were doing. The report would take 1 week at the quoted price." I authorized it without hesitation. While waiting, I reviewed security camera footage I had been collecting since the harassment started. I had installed 2 high-definition cameras after the second parking incident, covering the driveway and street approach with continuous recording and cloud backup. On September 12th at 2:14 a.m., the footage captured Karen's Porsche pulling up to my property line. She got out with a laser measuring device and marking paint. A man in his 40s accompanied her. Together they spent 20 minutes measuring, photographing, and painting the yellow line across my driveway. The video showed faces, license plates, and every detail. This was not circumstantial. This was direct proof that Karen had created the physical evidence to support her fraudulent easement claim. I compiled everything into one comprehensive file. Original county plat. Forged amendment. Dr. Vance's forensic analysis. Security video. Harold's leaked email proving financial motive. Construction delay invoices totaling $15,000. Screenshots of the defamatory forum post and photographs of repeated obstructions. I organized it chronologically and cross-referenced every claim with supporting documentation. The timeline showed exactly how Karen's actions had escalated from harassment to criminal fraud. This was no longer a property dispute. This was a prosecutable case with evidence that could not be challenged. Martin reviewed the complete file the following Monday, and his expression was serious. "Keith, you've built something airtight here. Fraud, harassment, tortious interference, forgery of government documents. We can file civil suits and refer the criminal elements to the district attorney. But I'm recommending something that might sound counterintuitive. We go public first. Request an emergency HOA board meeting. Invite the community. Bring the county building inspector and a sheriff's deputy as official witnesses. And present this evidence in front of everyone. HOA disputes resolve fastest when the truth becomes undeniable and the entire community watches it happen in real time. If we execute this correctly, Karen will have no option except resignation, restitution, and facing criminal investigation. But it must be public, transparent, and immediate before she can destroy evidence or create new fabrications. I looked at everything spread across his desk and felt the dynamic shift completely. For weeks, I had been defensive, documenting Karen's escalation while she acted with apparent impunity. Now the situation had reversed. I had irrefutable proof of forgery, witness testimony, expert analysis, and video evidence showing her painting false boundary markers at 2 a.m. She thought she was pressuring me into selling cheap so she could profit from consolidating properties for development. Instead, she had methodically documented her own felonies. Martin was absolutely right. This needed to be public. The community deserved to see what their HOA president had done with her authority. And Karen needed to understand that forging government documents to steal someone's property rights carries permanent consequences. I told Martin to arrange the emergency meeting. After weeks of playing defense and absorbing attacks on my finances and reputation, it was time to present the truth and let Karen face what she had created. The evidence was overwhelming. The law was clear, and justice was about to become very, very public. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for Saturday at 10 a.m. in the Meadow Ridge Community Hall. By 9:45, nearly 70 residents had packed into the space, most from Meadow Ridge but some from surrounding streets who had heard about the dispute. Martin Cross had ensured County Building Inspector Tom Ridgway and Sheriff Deputy Linda Hayes would attend as official witnesses. Karen stood near the front with 3 board members. Navy blazer crisp, clipboard ready, her expression radiating the same manufactured authority she always projected. She thought this was another performance where she would control the narrative. Outside in the parking lot, visible through the hall's front windows, sat the Caterpillar D6T Bulldozer I had rented for site work. 20 tons of steel and diesel. The operator, Big Mike, sat in the cab waiting. The machine was legal, permitted, and positioned exactly where everyone could see it. Karen called the meeting to order at 10 a.m. sharp. We're here to address Mr. Keith Donovan's continued violations of HOA parking regulations and his refusal. Martin stood smoothly. Mrs. Whitfield, before you continue, Mr. Donovan has requested to present evidence regarding your easement claims. As this is an open meeting, he has that right. Her smile tightened. Of course, though I'm not sure what evidence could contradict official county records. I connected my laptop to the projection screen. First slide, the original 1987 county plat showing my property with no parking easements. Second slide, Karen forged the 13th Amendment with the fabricated yellow zone. Third slide, side-by-side comparison showing the copied signature. Fourth slide, Dr. Patricia Vance's forensic report conclusion, highlighted in red. The amended easement map is a forgery created with the intent to deceive. The room went silent. Karen's face drained of color. Next slide, security footage from September 12th at 2:14 a.m. The video played without narration. Karen and an unknown man are spray painting the yellow line on my driveway. When it ended, someone in the audience audibly gasped. I advanced through the remaining evidence quickly. Harold's email revealing the Summit Realty scheme. Registration documents proving Karen owned the LLC. Construction delay invoices showing $15,000 in damages. Her defamatory forum post. Each slide landed like a hammer blow, and I could see Karen's composure fracturing in real time. She stood abruptly, voice shaking. This is fabricated. That video is fake. I have every right to enforce regulations. Martin's voice cut through the room, cold and precise. You have no rights over property outside your HOA jurisdiction. You forged a government document. A federal felony under Title 18, Section 1001. You painted false markers on private property. You interfered with permitted construction, all to force Mr. Donovan to sell so you could profit personally. He turned to Deputy Hayes. The court order, please. Linda Hayes stood and read from an official document. By county civil court order, Karen Whitfield must immediately remove her vehicle from private property at Pine Crescent. The civil abatement order requires the immediate elimination of any obstruction on private property. Mrs. Whitfield, your Porsche is currently blocking Mr. Donovan's driveway. You have 60 seconds to move it. Every head turned to the windows where the black Porsche sat in its usual spot. Karen's voice rose. That is HOA property. The shared easement, I have every right. Hayes checked her watch. 45 seconds. Karen did not move. She gripped her clipboard, body rigid with defiance, genuinely believing her position superseded property law. Hayes counted the final 10 seconds aloud. At 0. She nodded to Ridgway, who stepped outside and signaled Big Mike. The diesel engine roared to life, and the sound carried into the silent hall. Everyone moved to the windows. Big Mike maneuvered the Caterpillar D6T forward on steel tracks, 20 tons rolling toward the Porsche that sat alone and exposed in morning sunlight. The blade lowered hydraulically until level with the hood. Karen ran outside screaming. "Stop! That's an $85,000 car!" Hayes followed calmly. "You refused a lawful order to remove an obstruction. This is the consequence." The bulldozer advanced, and the blade made contact. Metal screamed against metal. The hood crumpled instantly, black paint shattering into spiderweb cracks. The windshield exploded into cascading glass fragments. The blade drove the entire front end backward, engine block crushing into the passenger cabin, frame collapsing like cardboard. 20 tons of force shoved the vehicle sideways, its wheels shrieking across the asphalt, its doors buckling inward, its roof beginning to cave. 45 seconds transformed the Porsche Cayenne from a luxury vehicle into twisted wreckage, barely recognizable as a car. Absolute silence held for 3 seconds. Then someone clapped. Others joined, within moments. Half the room applauded, not celebrating destruction but acknowledging that justice had been publicly executed. Karen stood on the pavement staring at the ruins, face colorless, hands shaking, behind her. 70 neighbors had watched her authority disintegrate, her lies exposed, her manufactured power collapse in real time. Tom Ridgway approached with formal papers. "Mrs. Whitfield, I'm filing a criminal referral to the district attorney regarding the forged documents. You're being billed for construction delays, legal fees, and damages totaling $35,400, due in 90 days. Karen said nothing. She stared at the compacted metal that had been her Porsche, destroyed by the weight of her own actions. Harold Bennett walked past her toward the parking lot and quietly said to no one in particular, "She's been doing this to people for years. Someone finally had enough." The crowd began filing out, some stopping to shake my hand, others just nodding with what looked like relief. Karen remained frozen beside the wreckage as the bulldozer engine idled down and Big Mike climbed out of the cab. He glanced at the destroyed Porsche, then at me, and said simply, "Property's clear now. You can start construction on Monday if you want." I told him that sounded perfect. The demolition of Karen's Porsche on that Saturday morning was not the end of the story, but it was the moment everything changed irreversibly. Within 72 hours, the county district attorney's office opened a formal criminal investigation into the forged easement documents. Karen hired a defense attorney who reviewed the evidence Martin and I had compiled. The forensic analysis from Dr. Patricia Vance, the security footage, Harold's email, and the testimony from multiple witnesses who had attended the public meeting. 3 weeks later, Karen's attorney contacted the DA and negotiated a plea agreement. She would plead guilty to 1 count of falsifying government documents under Title 18, Section 1001, accept 18 months of supervised probation, complete 300 hours of community service, and pay a fine of $50,000 to the county. More importantly, she would resign immediately from the HOA board and agree never to hold any HOA leadership position in the state again. The civil case moved faster than I expected. Martin filed a lawsuit seeking restitution for the $15,000 in construction delays, the $8,400 I had spent on legal fees and expert witnesses, and an additional $12,000 in punitive damages designed to send a clear message that this kind of abuse carried real financial consequences. Karen's insurance company reviewed the case, determined her actions fell outside coverage because they involved intentional fraud rather than negligent mistakes, and refused to defend her. She was on her own. Her attorney made one attempt to argue that the damages were excessive, but when Martin presented the complete timeline showing deliberate and escalating harassment over 2 months, the judge was not sympathetic. The court awarded me $35,400 in total damages, payable within 90 days or subject to wage garnishment and asset liens. Karen paid in full on day 87, likely liquidating savings or retirement accounts to cover the judgment, but the financial and legal consequences were only part of what Karen lost. The social cost was far more devastating. Within days of the public meeting, The story spread through the neighborhood and into surrounding communities. People talked about the forged documents, the 2 a.m. spray painting, the real estate scheme, and especially the bulldozer crushing the Porsche in front of 70 witnesses. Karen became a cautionary tale. The HOA president who had abused her authority so egregiously that she ended up with a criminal record and a demolished luxury car. Neighbors who had once deferred to her authority now avoided her entirely. The few friends she had in Meadow Ridge stopped returning calls. Her reputation, which she had carefully constructed over years of HOA leadership, was destroyed in a single morning. She listed her house for sale 4 months after the plea agreement and moved out of state. I heard through Harold that she relocated to Arizona, far from anyone who knew the story. The Meadow Ridge HOA board elected Harold Bennett as the new president in an emergency vote held 2 weeks after Karen's resignation. Harold's first official act was to send me a formal letter apologizing for the harassment I had endured and clarifying in writing that my property had never been subject to HOA jurisdiction, that no legitimate easements existed, and that the association would never again make claims over land outside its legal boundaries. He also amended the HOA bylaws to require independent legal review before any enforcement action against non-members, ensuring that no future board president could weaponize their position the way Karen had. It was not just an apology. It was an institutional reform designed to prevent the same abuse from happening to someone else. I resumed construction on my house in early October, exactly 6 weeks after the original delay. Miller Construction returned with the same crew, and this time there were no obstructions. No Porsches blocking the driveway, no orange cones or fake parking restrictions. Ray Coleman and his team poured the foundation, framed the structure, and worked through the fall without a single interruption. The house was completed in mid-March, 7 months after I broke ground, coming in just $5,000 over the original budget due to the delay costs that Karen's restitution payment had covered. It was 1,200 square feet of exactly what I had envisioned: clean lines, efficient layout, large windows facing the oak trees, and absolutely no one telling me what color to paint the trim or how tall my grass could grow. Standing on the front porch of that finished house, looking out at the 8/10 of an acre that I had fought to keep, I thought about what the entire experience had taught me. The most important lesson was this: bullies rely on people not fighting back. Karen had spent years controlling her HOA community because most residents found it easier to comply than to challenge her authority. She escalated with me because she assumed I would fold under pressure, sell my land cheap, and disappear quietly. She never considered that someone might document everything, hire experts, build an airtight case, and force the truth into public view. Her entire strategy depended on my silence and passivity. When I refused to give her either, her scheme collapsed under the weight of her own illegal actions. The second lesson was about the power of evidence and procedure. I won not because I was louder or more aggressive than Karen, but because I collected irrefutable proof of what she had done and presented it through proper legal channels. Every photograph with timestamps, every email, every invoice, every frame of security footage became part of an unassailable record that she could not talk her way around or reframe with bureaucratic language. The truth, when documented thoroughly and presented clearly, is a weapon that liars cannot defend against. That is why I spent money on forensic experts and attorneys instead of trying to handle it myself. Professional credibility matters when you are challenging someone in a position of authority. The third lesson, and perhaps the most satisfying, was that justice does not always come from the legal system alone. Yes, Karen faced criminal charges and civil judgments, but the real accountability came from the community seeing exactly who she was and what she had done. That public meeting where 70 people watched the evidence unfold and then witnessed the physical destruction of her Porsche was more powerful than any court verdict could have been. It stripped away her manufactured authority and exposed the reality beneath. She could not spin it, could not control the narrative, could not hide behind her clipboard and her title. Everyone saw the truth at the same moment, and that collective witness made her exile from the community inevitable. If you are dealing with someone who abuses authority, whether it is an HOA president, a landlord, a business partner, or any other person leveraging institutional power against you, remember this: document everything. Follow proper procedures. Build your case carefully. And when the time is right, make the truth public. Do not rely on private negotiations or quiet settlements with people who have already shown they will lie and manipulate. Force them to answer for their actions in front of witnesses who can see the evidence for themselves. That is how you turn the tables on a bully. That is how you protect not just yourself, but everyone else they might target in the future. My house stands exactly where I planned it, on land that no one can take from me, free from HOA control and false claims. Karen is gone. Her Porsche is scrap metal, and her reputation is destroyed. And every time I walk through my front door, I am reminded that standing up for what is right, even when it is expensive and exhausting and stressful, is always worth it in the end. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever dealt with someone who abused power and got away with it, or if you just believe that justice matters, I appreciate you being here. Consider supporting Karma Clause, because stories like this need to be told. People need to know that bullies do not always win, and that sometimes the truth comes with a 20-ton bulldozer attached.